So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about comments made by Christine Lagarde, who is the president of the European Central Bank, who was, I think, in charge of the IMF previously at some point, based on a Google search I did a second ago. So, Britain's inflation problems are worse because of Brexit. Because Brexit has drained the UK workforce, Christine Lagarde said, as the European Central Bank stuck to its ultra loose monetary stance. And the thing is, right, she's citing freedom of movement as an issue here, in a bit of a sly way. But she doesn't talk about, in this article at least, they don't talk about how Brexit has caused a supply chain problem and how the UK is struggling to get imports and exports essentially in and out of the UK, respectively, and the problem that that's causing, because the supply chain problems are huge for the UK. We've seen a drop in exports from the UK to other EU countries, and we've spoken about how other EU member states are picking up the slack for what the UK has left behind. So I think that should have been mentioned in this article, and I'm surprised if she didn't mention it. Why didn't she mention it? She just cited freedom of movement, really. I don't want to take a political stand, but I think that there was a lot of non-UK labour force that eventually had to leave the United Kingdom and has not totally been replaced. The ECB president has said, and she's right there, that the UK needs more people to come into this country because there are certain jobs that British people simply won't do. And on top of that, you need the amount of record vacancies is incredible, and you need people with expertise. It's not just the argument people made about unskilled labour or unskilled kind of people from the EU coming here taking jobs is simply a fallacy, when the UK is lacking a lot of skilled jobs. Plumbers, electricians, builders, head chefs, maitre d's, so many different industries need people with expertise to come to the UK to do these jobs, because the UK isn't built enough really to kind of create these sorts of people, teach these sorts of things, really. So, the argument that people made, British people just replace them. Like, how many people do you know in Britain that are head chefs that are out of work? Or, things like that. It takes years to, get into these roles and actually perfect your craft. Her comments came after data showed that the consumer price inflation across the Eurozone rose to 5.1% in January, more than 2.5 times the ECB target, and barely behind the 5.4% reading in the UK in December. The issue is that you've taken readings from 2 different months, which is a bit suspicious. The UK's problem is only getting worse, especially as we do import checks. So it's very strange that the author has taken 2 different numbers, essentially 2 different months from this. Maybe the UK's one for January wasn't available, but if you look at from what I've heard from people who are way more knowledgeable than I am, they've talked about how the Bank of England calculates inflation, and they're using some very weird items to and things to decide where the kind of inflation numbers are. Miss Lagarde said, the critical difference between Britain and the Eurozone from a central banking perspective was the former's history of much higher inflation. So essentially saying Britain has had a much bigger history of having higher inflation numbers, so she's not so concerned with the kind of Eurozone's inflation number. I guess she would be slightly concerned, but not as much as maybe Andrew Bailey should be. The ECB announced it would keep interest rates at record lows, which is interesting because the UK, the central bank, the Bank of England, has actually raised interest rates and is further looking at raising interest rates as the year goes on. But these low interest rates in the ECB won't hold on towards the end of the year. So they are also looking at phasing out stimulus efforts this year, which I don't think it's a good idea. I think you need more stimulus until the economic crisis goes, but again, I'm no expert in this field. Ms Lagarde struck a hawkish tone during comments to the press, acknowledging inflation could prove higher than expected over the long term, which, again, surely you need stimulus and you need growth to combat that. Its governing council left rates unchanged despite pressure to act, after data on Wednesday showed inflation in the Eurozone had risen to a record high. Bank of America declared the Hawks have won in Frankfurt, predicting the ECB would put rates up in September, which, again, not being an economic expert, I don't think putting up interest rates now is a good idea. In the UK, people's mortgages are going up and things like that, and yes, it will benefit people that save money, but realistically right now you really don't want people to put money into savings. You want them to spend it and kind of put that money back into the economy. But this area is not my, this kind of financial stuff is not my area of expertise. I am hoping to bring someone on who has far more knowledge than I do of the financial world, and which isn't a high bar for me. But Christine Lagarde saying that Brexit has made Britain's inflation problem far worse, or sorry, worse should I say, which she cited freedom of movement as a key example of this. But I'm amazed she didn't mention the supply chain problems. Maybe because she didn't want to get too political in her statements, and maybe her focus is more on the EU rather than the UK. But what she's saying here, I think, is true, that the UK is facing major problems with manufacturing and other services. Wages have gone up in certain sectors, but it's not enough to keep up with inflation. And wages going up in certain sectors has contributed to inflation and other problems. But we need to see wages increase, really, because of the cost of living crisis. It does go into a bit of a spiral, but people don't have money, they can't buy any of these manufactured goods, so that will cause big problems. But anyways, I'm no expert in financial stuff, as you should know by now. All I can give you is my opinion and base it on certain things. But you've got the head of the ECB saying Brexit has increased inflation in the UK, and we'll see what happens, how high it goes, because the Bank of England warned that things could be worse until kind of the middle of 2023. And to be fair, it's probably one of the few things I'll actually agree with Andrew Bailey. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.